So, for those who haven't played Chrono Trigger, first off, play Chrono Trigger. It's an amazing game. Liz will swear by it. Chrono Trigger is amazing.
It's amazing.
See?
I got lost in it.
It's fine. Just as a reminder, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. The notes for what series and stories might pop up will be in the description. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Gaming Theater Podcast. Today's episode on Gaming Theater Podcast is about the 9 alignments from Dungeons & Dragons and how you can fit different antagonists for that. So the 9 alignments and their antagonists. Now, before we get started, we have a couple of guests that are going to be hopping on and helping to explain stuff like this for us. Or even correct me if I'm getting my alignments all mixed up. Once again, let's get ourselves introduced. My name is Leo. I'm the Geek Scorpio.
My name is Rob. I play several voices on Gaming Theater Presents. I am also a game design student.
This is Zombie Hand, also known as Liz. I do some voices for Gaming Theater and sometimes man the games that we play, and I guess could be considered a co-creator of the channel.
Hi, I'm Ty. I'm guest for today, and I play way too much D&D. So that's where my experience comes into here.
Great. Before we get started, let's take a quick trip over to the Magical Merch booth. Hi everyone, this is Geek Scorpio.
And Zombie Hand for Gaming Theater Podcast.
For the month of August, we have decided to team up with a local charity called Simply Cats.
Simply Cats got its start with just 6 cats as Just Strays Animal Foundation, Inc. in the late 1980s. By 2005, the name of the shelter was changed to Simply Cats Adoption Center to reflect its feline-only animal population.
Their mission is to save cats from suffering euthanasia and practicing and promoting high standards of care and creating successful adoptions.
A link will be featured in the podcast description where you can find out more information on Simply Cats, including how to donate, support, or even make an adoption.
We have a lot of cat lovers that work with us at Gaming Theater, so for the month of August, we are donating $5 per Patreon supporter to Simply Cats.
Not only do we support Simply Cats, but that's where my cat Phoenix comes from. You may have heard him in the background of some of our recordings.
Thank you for listening. We hope you take a look at Simply Cats, but for now, back to the show. Alright, so today's episode is all about the 9 alignments that exist in Dungeons & Dragons and how they relate to different stories and storytellings. For some people who haven't looked into it, Dungeons & Dragons, it is no short task to say there is a good portion of video games that are designed because of Dungeons & Dragons. You can trace that all the way back to the games such as Ultima, Final Fantasy, and very early RPGs when they spin off. And then certain games nowadays, like the Baldur's Gate series, are direct representation of Dungeons & Dragons and such. But one of the things that Dungeons & Dragons has introduced to the world is their alignment system. Now, real quick before we get started, let's kind of explain the alignment system a little bit. The alignment system was one, I believe, that started back in even as early on as the first edition. And it had been a staple for Dungeons & Dragons for many different classes and characters. Generally speaking, it's sort of define parts and pieces of role play is what they were originally meant for.
If I remember correctly, in the original settings of Dungeons and Dragons, sorry to cut in.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
In the original, first few editions, certain classes were restricted by their alignments. You had to play a lawful good character to be a paladin, and that's where the joke, lawful stupid paladins come from.
I'm a paladin. I gotta do this.
Yep.
I do know that I believe you could, if you were playing a rogue back in the original ones, you couldn't be any higher than chaotic good at the bottom barrel for it.
I don't.
And chaotic neutral.
Yeah.
That's what it was. You couldn't.
Well, so for anyone who's not particularly familiar with the alignment system, it's actually on 2 axes. The first axis is the law axis, where you are either lawful, or you're chaotic, or you're neutral. And the other axis is the good-evil one. So you're either good or evil, or neutral. And you pick one from each category, resulting in 9 potential choices: lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful evil, or chaotic good, chaotic neutral, chaotic evil, or neutral good, neutral neutral, or neutral evil.
Yeah, so generally, I believe it's about fourth edition, and I know it's not in fifth edition. They just sort of got rid of it, and mostly from my understanding, it's because of sort of like pigeonholing your characters. Um, just because you are a bad guy, or as the saying goes, just because I'm a bad guy doesn't mean I'm a bad guy.
Yeah.
Well, the alignment system is technically present in 5th edition. It just
Yeah.
doesn't have any effect on anything.
Yeah, it's flavor text at this point. Well, kind of. There's some spells and stuff in 5th edition now, like detect good and evil and stuff like that that tell you what they are. So it helps players find, the good people and the bad people, but that doesn't necessarily mean like it's really hand wavy compared to like hard set rules and laws.
Mhm. Like originally, most of those were sort of an in-game way of doing. So, for example, when a character say is fighting a vampire and they're holding up a holy symbol, that's one of the things that the alignment was supposed to represent in older D&Ds. Is this is you imposing this good against something that's very clearly evil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so clerics had to deal with that and a lot. Now, where we some of us do use it in modern times, and is it's great for a way of sort of explaining characters. It's a shorthand for that. Instead of trying to go through a 16-page backstory, I could just say, "Yeah, he's lawful good."
Yeah, it's compartmentalization.
Now, so and at least 3/4 of us have GM'd or game or DM'd a tabletop role playing game of one sort or another. So, what we're kind of wanting to explore here is the idea of an antagonist, an opposing force to your heroes, to your main characters. And if done right, you can do have an antagonist for any one of these categories. And that's where we're going to explore today. A good shorthand for character creation and what characters would be best fit in those categories. Just as a side note, this is all opinion. So, anybody here who's like, that's not how it is, eh, leave us a message or something on Twitter. But so, without further ado, let's start with probably the easiest one to figure out how you do a bad guy. The first alignment that I want to talk about today is chaotic evil. From my understanding, as I put it, chaotic evil is typically basically your purest type of evil. These are creatures and things that do bad things and just cause chaos and want to rip and tear things apart. They really don't have a rhyme or a reason for it. And 9 times out of 10, negotiations are just out the door. They know exactly who they are and what they're doing, and this is where it's going to go through.
I think like early Disney films had probably like the best version of evil for evil's sake. Like usually when you think chaotic
Mm-hmm.
evil, you think, like absolute crazy people full bent on destruction. Like, no, Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, absolutely chaotic evil character, but she was insanely intelligent. It's just she knew she was doing evil. She knew she was the bad guy, and it was just like, yeah, I'm living this, and I'm fine with that.
Yep, this is my life. This is what I do now.
Yep.
It's just as a reminder, one of my favorite series out there is the Evil Dead series. Evil Dead, that whole thing, the Evil Dead, that's it. They are literally, it's in the name. They're evil and they're dead. Enjoy. They don't even care that much to spread their evil around. Just once it's open, enjoy, deal with the evil. Ultimately, they care about like one thing, which is killing Ash, and even then, it just whatever evil and chaos that they can spring to the world. That's them.
It's literally a side quest to kill the main character.
Should we spread our evil to the dark lands? As long as somebody has the book, that's pretty much the minimum requirement. Then, if you have the Necronomicon, that's it. We're good.
Yeah, chaotic evil villains are very low maintenance and very easy to do. Um, Making a really good chaotic evil villain, definitely you have to put in a little bit more legwork for them to make sense. But the setup for them is literally, hey, you're evil. That's all you are. You don't need to be, you can't be persuaded, you can't be bribed or changed of heart. You can't like talk no jutsu your way out of it.
There's no coming back for that.
From a writing standpoint, really, I mean, you get a lot of flack for doing an antagonist who's chaotic evil because it's seen as lazy, but there's really nothing inherently wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're presenting a story where your morality is pretty black and white, there's really nothing wrong with having someone who's just sort of inherently evil to be the bad guy. If you don't want your story to be exploring the moral implications of good and evil, this is where you go. This is how you do it.
There's some really good examples in some of my favorite games that are some of my favorite things that have it. Doomsday, total antagonist for Superman, pretty much has one job: kill Superman. Everything else that gets in the way, The bandits from Borderlands is another good example. Those bandits are just regular, just going down there, gone crazy, attack mode. Oh, go.
Yeah, I mean, most enemy mooks that you're going to be facing in a video game are probably going to be chaotic evil. Goblins or orcs or whatever. That's just, you just need something that your player can kill without feeling guilty about it.
In most D&D games, the most common like super evil is goblins. I mean, like it's the classic fantasy villain is Cave of Goblins. And so like it's easy to make a super evil villain to fight. To make them make sense is a little weirder, and like Rob said, you can get a lot of flack for it, but I mean, when you want to just throw, black and white out there, just, you want the good guy to beat up the bad guy. That's it. Like it's a simple, nice story of good triumphing evil. You just go chaotic evil. It's
If anybody here has played the Suikoden series, in Suikoden 2, one of the first villains that you deal with is Luca Blight. Completely, psychotically evil, okay? This is a guy who burns down a village just because it got in the way of him getting to the other village that I need to burn down. That's sort of his... He's in a weird position because essentially the opposing army that you're dealing with just sends him out to take people down, and he's so good at and so destructive, no one wants to tell him no or to stop him. They just let him run rampant. Peace talks weren't even considered until after he's removed from the board. That's how bad this is. It is very satisfactory to kill when you actually beat him in the game, but good lord, the amount of evil not wanting to go down is crazy. It's like a 3-part fight, and you have to send wave after wave of arm. You have to almost Zap Brannigan your way through this and send wave after wave of enemies until he finally goes down.
Oh geez. You know what? There's an anime that I watched called Akame Kill. I watched it a while back. There was a character like that. If you want to show like an anime that is almost entirely black and white, or not really black and white, it's kind of all morally gray, but like super dark morally gray. There's one character who is so black and white in her view of the world. She is absolute chaotic evil. She just wants combat. She just wants murder. And that is like the big end boss of the anime as Death. And she has like ice powers and all this stuff, but literally she's working for a corrupt government that she knows is corrupt. She could totally fix the entire system if she wanted to by herself, and she just doesn't, because the corrupt government just kept sending her on combat missions, and she was fine with that.
I'm good.
Yeah, she's just like, I just want to murder. That's it. You keep sending me out for murdering, I won't kill you. That's how it is.
Kind of going along with the examples of why this is definitely not a bad trope. Arguably the most famous villain and probably the most popular of all time, the Joker from Batman, is chaotic evil, no question.
Yeah.
And unlike a lot of examples of this, he's actually leaning into it. Part of his character is that he's trying to be chaotic. He is specifically an antithesis to the lawful Batman for certain definitions of lawful.
Yeah, for very certain definitions of it.
But he's specifically going out of his way to do things that people don't expect. He's trying to be a force of chaos just for the sake of chaos.
Yeah, there's definitely one instance of that I really do love about the, like, we keep talking about the chaotic evils and stuff. But yeah, like the Joker is a perfect version of what chaotic evil really does represent, because he's just this charismatic force that no one wants to screw with. Like even Superman, and all that other stuff, like most of the DC heroes don't want to ever touch the Joker because they know he just can't be handled by like almost anyone, because like aside from Batman, no one wants to deal with him.
The way it's been described is that is that Batman will is just like, well, I think it's one Superman comic or show. Superman's like, yeah, it's just a Joker. I'll deal with it. And Batman just says, okay, you got to be careful. You got to take steps. Ignores it, immediately goes into a coma, dealing with the Joker.
Because you can never expect anything. Like literally, that's how Injustice happened.
Mm-hmm.
Is just the Joker got tired of losing to Batman and is just like, you know what? I'm gonna go cause an apocalypse by using Superman. Why not?
That's just the thing.
And like he expected to die too. That's probably like he wanted to die by Superman to prove a point. That's all this was to prove a point to Batman.
It just reminds me of an old Batman the Animated Series that I loved. That episode, which was he is that the Joker is about to fight the U.S. government because on the basis of the fact that he can't put smiling faces on fishes because fish is a natural resource commodity.
That's hilarious.
That he's like, you just can't. It's a natural resource. It's like putting a copyright on gold. You can't just do that. Before we move on to the next step, there's one I wanted to ask, and Zombie, and we'll have a better understanding of this, mostly because you know Alan Wake better than I do. Mr. Scratch.
I just want to preface this, Rob, that I didn't put this one on the list.
Yeah, this is all me.
That's fine.
Brandon would have had something to say about it.
Oh yeah, you would. Anyway,
so yes, I love Alan Wake. Mr. Scratch is a villain that was created. It's kind of a long story, but ultimately he was actually created to be a doppelganger of Alan Wake at the end of the first game, but he doesn't become like prolific until the DLC, Alan Wake's American Nightmare, where he is the main antagonist. And he was created. So Alan is a writer, and he is actually known to be a little bit volatile at times. But like, so he punched a reporter once. He's kind of not always super nice to his like more especially clingy fans and like people that irritate him. He's not just gonna like shrug it off and be nice. And he is known for, like, when he's on tours and stuff, like, partying and getting drunk. And so Mr. Scratch was created as a doppelganger of Alan, but based purely off of the public, like, interpretation, I guess, of Alan. Like, how the public sees Alan. And so they see... Yeah, like a persona. And so they see Alan as like a very talented man who, you know, is very charismatic, because he does. Like there's one point you watch an interview with him in the actual game. And he is very charismatic and he's very like, you know, friendly as needed, I guess. And so Mr. Scratch is created to be charismatic and outgoing, but also extremely volatile and temperamental. And so in Alan Wake's American Nightmare, he is there to taunt Alan, but he's out in the real world, or what Alan thinks is the real world, holding parties and like getting people super like invested and having a good time, and then he'll take somebody into the back room and kill them. And he has a little TV that there's TVs around the dark place that Alan is trapped in. And Alan will find these TVs and be forced to watch this person wearing his face killing people or torturing people, and it's pretty rough, but he is purely there for like shits and giggles. He's there for funsies. Like, he's not there to do anything. Like, his motivation is to be this version of Alan, and so like that's it. He's there to mess with Alan. And because of the way he was created, he was like, he had no chance. He just had no chance but to be chaotic evil.
So I wanted to read it off with that one because on the basis of, I think it's ironic to have a video game about a writer and us telling you that, you know what, chaotic evil isn't bad. It's just, as long as you have a decent, good enough writer, and sometimes you just need a force to be reckoned with. Now, the next one after that, though, is going to be the neutral evil. Neutral evil characters tentatively is, as the way I understand it, is that they will do bad things, but they really don't care about the law. They don't go out of their way to break the law, but they have no qualms doing bad things for it.
I think this is one of the things that trips a lot of people up about the alignment system, because we know what lawful is, we know what chaos is. What's neutral? Where do you draw the line between I follow the law but not all of it, and I don't follow the law but I'm not out to break?
I think personally this is where I put like most villains who are out for revenge. Like, these are like the revenge plot people where they're just like, I want you dead, and I don't care about breaking the laws. I'm not going to try to, but I want to make sure that person suffers, kind of thing.
Yeah, like, I know whatever act I'm doing is bad, but I'm mostly doing it to get you specifically.
Yeah, it's like a bad self-justification.
Like, a weird example, but it keeps popping up over and over again that I bumped into, is your classic Scooby-Doo villains. They're not... Your classic Scooby-Doo villains is usually a guy in a mask, typically trying to scare people away from a place just because he wants to get some, I don't know, diamonds that's buried at the bottom of this house, or a real estate scam, or gold. Spanish doubloons come up an awful lot in Louisiana, apparently.
I definitely say that like Scooby-Doo villains would fit mostly into neutral and lawful evil.
Mm-hmm. Because they're not actually going out to... especially Scooby-Doo villains, murder isn't their first instinct. They just want them away to deal with whatever problems they have.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people get tripped up on neutral evil. In neutral evil's case, there's no... In chaotic evil, it's all about, okay, I'm going to do as much destruction and such just to get to my end point. Neutral evil doesn't want to do that destruction or stuff, but if it happens,
I think particularly with Scooby-Doo villains, and even more particularly with the real estate scam, which is probably the most common thing in the original Scooby-Doo cartoon. Like, real estate scams was like the crime of the 70s, I guess. But so, like, what they're doing sometimes isn't even illegal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's why I said it's lawful evil. Yeah, that's why I said it's lawful evil, because they're just bending the law to do what they want.
In general, it's not illegal to scare somebody. You know, you might be able to draw somebody up on, like, disturbance of the peace laws or something like that, but it's kind of reaching. You know, especially if they're trying to scare you away from a place that's abandoned. Like, no one's going into the old abandoned mine outside of town anyway.
The only reason they're going there is to investigate the weird ghost zombie that just appeared.
Do we have to worry about anything? Unless there's a group of teenagers or young adults with a talking dog, we should be okay.
Like, legitimately, if they didn't make up the scams that they did half the time, they could have literally gotten away with it without any trouble. The problem is like, they thought they had to do something, And I think that's kind of where I kind of want to tie this into neutral evil, is that neutral evil is kind of the idea you have to do something, and you don't know if it's right or wrong, and
Yeah.
you're just justifying it.
So, a way I've been, from the research I've been doing for neutral evil, this is your henchman evil. They're not out, they're just working for the bad guy. A good example of that is in Kim Possible, Shigo. Shigo does not do plans. Shigo just works for Draken. Draken makes the plans. Shigo's just like, all right, I'll fight things because that's my job. And Shigo knows it's the villain. Good to go.
Yeah, no.
Pretty much most of the Fire Nation, as far as Avatar is concerned, is also.
Yeah.
I might disagree on that point. The Fire Nation are following laws. It's just they're following Fire Nation laws. The Fire Nation King might be neutral evil, but the Fire Nation itself is following his rule.
Fire Lord Ozai.
And then you have Azula, who's definitely chaotic evil.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Azula's just crazy. She needs to go down.
Just full on crazy. Yeah, no, I like the idea that like neutral evil is the like, this is my job. This is what I'm kind of like, it's what I was hired for, so I'm doing it because I was told to. Like, it's the placing blame on someone else kind of thing.
Yeah, these are ones like I think if you want to go with the Turtles reference, Bebop and Rocksteady. Without the Shredder, they do like nothing.
I haven't heard those names in forever. Oh.
But yeah, they were like a low rent gang and pretty much didn't go anywhere unless the Shredder told them to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally see it. And like this is a kind of a weird thing. This is what I do a lot in my games too. In my D&D games, is like I'll have the grunts be like, "Oh yeah, we're here to do our work and our job, and you know, we're doing really, not good things, but we're getting paid for it." And that's like, I think neutral evil is when you can start to like negotiate with the villains.
Mm-hmm. You start to, because I think in neutral evil, it's almost the case of we're doing evil things, but that's because Bill over here is also doing evil things.
Yeah, like we're doing this because realistically we're kind of in a position where we have to, not because we want to.
So it's not the way everyone defines good and evil, but the way I generally define good and evil, especially in regards to the alignment chart, is how much you are willing to sacrifice your own needs or others' needs. So, like, if you are willing to sacrifice other people's wants and needs in order to serve your own, that makes you evil. If you're willing to sacrifice your own wants and needs in order to fulfill the wants and needs of others, that makes you good. And so, like, a reason I think a lot of mooks fall into this category is they understand they're doing evil. They understand they're hurting other people, but it benefits them, and that's the more important part.
Okay, so it's a sliding scale.
Oh yeah, and like a weird example, but after going through it, in Chrono Trigger, one of the villains that you deal with is Magus, who is presented as a big main villain, but only like at the halfway point of the game, really. And they just know. So for those who haven't played Chrono Trigger, first off, play Chrono Trigger. It's an amazing game. Liz will swear by it. Chrono Trigger is amazing.
It's amazing.
See,
I got lost in it.
It's fine. In Chrono Trigger, the main villain is this creature called Lavos, which basically is trying to destroy is going to destroy the world at some point in the future. In Chrono Trigger, your main goal is to try to stop it. At some point in the storyline, though, they find out that there's a large summoning ritual that's being planted by this guy named Magus, and so once they find out about that there was a summoning ritual for Magus, now Magus is the bad guy. If we stop Magus, we can stop Lavos from being summoned, and everything is kosher. That's the plan. You go through there, you deal with Magus. Magus hasn't even lifted a finger has basically stopped fighting anyone up until this border of a bridge. He has an army, but they're all standing in defense right now. He doesn't. He just wants to stop that because his biggest concern is trying to also, as you find out, deal with Lavos. And the interesting thing about it is this is where towards the end of the game he can
Hmm.
switch, and if you do things right, he will join your party to stop Lavos. Because yeah, he might be the bad guy, but Lavos is way worse.
Yeah, that's fair.
Look, I might stop us. I might hold on to my own country, but Lavos is going to destroy the planet, guaranteed.
Yeah, I think that's when you just go like, you know what? Truce, truce.
Truce. Let's stop that guy in particular.
I think that's actually a good point. I hadn't really considered that for Magus, because he's not really lawful, but he's also not really chaotic.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
He'll infiltrate other governments, to bring them down, but like he's not going after the government specifically. It's just a means to an end. For him, the end is defeating Lavos, which would be more of a chaotic evil being. Magus really only uses the law when it benefits him, otherwise he'll discard it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think that's probably from what I've heard of the character, because once again I got lost on Chrono Trigger, so I like got through like the first 3 cutscenes. I like from the descriptions, like yeah, no, this definitely is probably a pretty textbook for like what neutrality would be the epitome of, which is you can switch between acts of destruction and acts of manipulation to get what you want. Basically, do I need to work with these people to get what I want? I'll work with them. Do I need to destroy these people to get what I want? I'll destroy them. But whatever is the, I think, quickest way to get your benefits.
100%. Just play Chrono Trigger with a guide. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
It's so worth it and so good, and that's just my aside, because I agree with what you're saying, but if you like old school RPGs, Chrono Trigger's so good.
Yeah, like the 5 areas I could access, I loved playing it.
that's and it's such a good one.
It is. It's such a good game. But yeah, I'm probably gonna restart my save file and find a guide.
Now, I don't know if this falls under neutral evil because I keep seeing the name pop up when I did some research. Mr. Burke from Fallout 3. Mr. Burke, if I recall, is a guy who asks you. So in Fallout 3, one of the first towns you go to is a place called Megaton. In the center of Megaton is a giant atomic bomb that has fallen, still leaking radiation, but has not detonated. You have a couple of options with that. One of the things that you could do is go the good route and get your repair skill up and and wire the bomb so it doesn't blow up at all. But you can also go into a bar and you'll find a guy named Mr. Burke there. And Mr. Burke, because his employer told him to do this, has a detonator that you can attach to the nuke. Now, it's just to explain it, you are going to level a city if you hit this button. That's just what's going to happen on that. But I think it stops you in 2 points of the game, basically asking you sure you want to do this? Because there's no coming back from this one.
You changed the map by pressing this button. You know that, right?
Just making sure this button.
Did you do all those quests in Megaton? Are you sure? Did you get that EXP? Because they're not there anymore after this blows up.
But the thing is that Mr. Burke could physically do it himself. He's just not going to.
Well, he doesn't do it himself because he's suspect. Basically, the sheriff already knows that he's not a good guy, and so he's keeping an eye on him. You, who are basically brand new in town, you're a nameless, faceless person, you could get in there. Nobody would even notice.
Mm-hmm. And here, you install this. But basically, Mr. Burke only operates on orders, and that's about it. He just waits for a guy. He's been waiting there for what? Probably weeks on end, waiting for some patsy to come by.
For context, too, Mr. Burke's boss, I believe it was Mr. Tenpenny.
Yeah, this is Tenpenny.
Is 100% chaotic evil.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reason he wants to get rid of Megaton is he doesn't like the way it looks from his balcony on his giant rich person tower. It's it's messing up the horizon line. It's an eyesore. I want it gone. Better blow it up.
The truest
That is the most 1% reasoning for evil I just don't
The
like
truest
it.
sort
Get
of
rid of it.
reasoning I've ever heard.
It's an eyesore.
And Mr. Bird, specifically in the Fallout universe, that's kind of an interesting point to make, though, because there really is not a lot of law in Fallout.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, this is a post-apocalypse. The law is, do you have a gun and can you defend yourself? That's the law.
I don't, if I'm trying to remember correctly, but does Fallout call it good and evil, or do they call it something else for their alignments?
Well, they use a karma-based system.
Yeah.
But it is basically good or evil. There actually is no lawful or evil in Fallout, or lawful or chaos in Fallout. There's only good and evil.
Yeah.
Because chaos is all around you. It's a post-apocalyptic waste.
Oh god, what would the Brotherhood of Steel be?
They'll be coming up in a later part of this. I have plans for
Okay.
them, but they are on this. See, let's move off of neutral evil. So neutral evil, we kind of established with that. The next set that's going to be on this list is your lawful evil. Lawful evil, I find, is actually kind of a fun evil, if you can call it that. Lawful evil characters and villains and antagonists will use the law to either do an evil act or gain their means, or alternatively, do evil to keep the law going. So they knowingly do bad things, but it's either to maintain that status quo with the law or to push that law forward. So a lot of these, the reason why I find them to be fun antagonists is because to manipulate the law, a lot of these are a type of chess master or magnificent bastard type of characters. These are the villains which plan 16 steps ahead because they don't want the law to get to. They don't want to disturb the law in place.
I think it's important to note, especially since we are talking villains here, the general consensus for D&D lawful, and mind you, this is open to interpretation. But for most people, when they're talking about lawful in D&D, they're not necessarily talking about like the same law that we have now with law and order and police and stuff. Lawful in this case means there's some structure that you're following, but it's not necessarily the same one that everyone else is following. So a lot of mafia bosses are lawful evil. They're not following the law of the land, but they are following their own law, and they don't break it.
Yeah, it's basically like a code of conduct, or like the Bushido code, but for villainy.
These are the rules that we do not break, like, at all. These are the rules that we stick by.
So there's actually one I kind of wanted to talk about here, and I know there's a lot of awesome lawful evil villains to talk about, but this is a very recent one that I started watching in a show called Monkey Kid. You might not have heard of it because it's pretty much Chinese only, and it only recently made it over to the States, and in a lot of ways it hasn't officially made it over to the States. But there's a villain in there called the Lady Bone Demon. Monkey Kid is loosely based on the Journey to the West. It's sort of like what happens 2,000 years after the Journey to the West happened, so it's more set in modern times. Monkey King is still alive, and a lot of characters from the book are still alive because they're immortal. But there's also a lot of new characters. And it's also loosely based because Lady Bone Demon in Journey to the West was not that powerful of a villain, but she is crazy powerful in Monkey Kid. Easily the most dangerous villain in the entire show.
Is this like the like Lego animated one?
This is, yes, it is based on a Lego set.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. I will 100% recommend it. You should go watch it. It's phenomenal.
I've seen some animation videos of it. It looks fantastic.
It really is. Lady Bone Demon's big thing is destiny. Everything she does is about fulfilling destiny. And she believes that her destiny is to destroy the universe and remake it.
Huh.
She doesn't really like the way that the universe is going. A lot of mortals are suffering, and the people in the celestial realm don't care. And so she wants to wipe all that out and rebuild it so that everything's fair. And that means hurting a lot of people.
Yeah. To kind of wipe the slate, you kind of have to wipe the slate.
Yeah. And so she's very like she's a very strong hand-to-hand fighter, but she rarely does because she mostly works through manipulation. She gets other people to do her bidding instead. And she often works on sort of exact words promises. She winds up betraying more than one person by promising them that she will fulfill their destiny. But it turns out your destiny is to die for my plan.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I don't like where this is going. Can I just get a refund on that, maybe?
Sorry, no refunds, it's destiny.
Speaking about like this character in particular, it reminds me of I watched a lot of Bleach as a kid. A lot of villains in Bleach actually would qualify as lawful evil.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like the big one obviously is Aizen, the fucking 3,000-year plan or whatever it is. Like he's definitely a lawful evil villain. He legitimately has his own code of conduct. There's another person who's Kaname, the blind soul reaper. He actually would not qualify as lawful evil. He would actually qualify as something else. I think he'd be chaotic good. But the final villain of the series, you watch, or however you pronounce that weird name. It starts with a Y. It's like YW. It's weird. But basically his entire thing is he is destined, in his mind, he is destined to become the new god. And he is going to find God, kill God, and take God's power. And because of that, he has to systematically take down every single character in the series. But he does it in such a weird way. Everything's about following an order. He doesn't just swarm, because he totally could. No, he literally takes out pieces at a time and just slowly takes away resources from everyone. And
Huh.
it's such a weird plan. I should probably go into a little bit more of it. So you watch basically was in a super coma. He lost all of his powers and basically went into stasis for 1,000 years. And basically on the last day of that 1,000 years, in the last like 10 days or so, he regains all of his powers, like incrementally.
Huh.
So like in the first day, he gains the ability to be awake, and then he gains like sight, hearing, and all this other stuff. And
Now loading power set. Hang on a second.
yeah, and to be completely blunt, this dude at full power walked into God's castle and just demolished everyone without even trying.
Jeez.
The craziest thing is he could have just waited. Like if he really wanted to, he could have just waited and attacked just him and destroyed everyone. But no, he did this like weird systematic like declaration of war and attacking certain people and legitimately giving them time to fight back. He legitimately gave them the time and methods to fight him. And that was, yeah. And it was all because he's like, if I'm going to be God, I will earn my title or something like that. And it's a really weird concept to make a lawful evil villain, because you make somebody with a very strict moral compass. Like, I think probably one of the best lawful evil villains I could think of is Doctor Doom. So, do you know why Doctor Doom became a bad guy?
Well, I mean, depending on the continuity, but isn't it basically because he didn't Reed Richards was better than him?
No. In actually the original comics, one of the original ways he became a villain is because he had a prophetic vision of the world. Because he was a practicer of magic and science, he had a prophetic vision that the world would be destroyed if it wasn't under his control. And so he became, he weaponized Latveria and became this huge villain for just the sake of saving the world. But he knew that he would be the villain until he controlled the planet. He legitimately was aiming for complete domination of the planet.
So I think in that sense, he'd probably be closer to a lawful good villain. Because even if the rest of the world sees him as evil, he believes he's doing what's right.
You know what? That's fair.
Hmm.
I mean, there's probably some interpretations where, other interpretations of him could be chaotic evil or stuff like that. But yeah, this specific interpretation, I would agree, would be lawful good for the context of villainy.
Yeah, one of the difficulties with defining villains from comic book series that have been around for 60 plus years.
They have 20 different starting stories, unless you're Spider-Man.
Yeah, there's been a lot of different writers, and who the character is and how they act is going to vary depending on which writer there was.
Yeah, Spider-Man's a pretty hard case for that.
One thing that there was a movie in the 90s called Demolition Man. In it, I think one of the weirdest lawful evil villains there is Dr. Raymond Cocteau, because he's not presented as the villain until you get halfway through the movie. Just for a short, explanation of the film, there's John Spartan and this guy named Simon Phoenix. Simon Phoenix is a criminal in the 90s who has this giant rap sheet and blows up a building with 40 people in it. But the trigger mechanism for all the explosions was tied to something that John Spartan accidentally triggered. Because he did that, John Spartan gets put into what's called a cryo chamber. So they freeze him and give him basically therapy until he serves his time, and then comes out at the end with all this stuff in his brain to keep him from being turning into more violent tendencies. Now, Simon Phoenix also goes through the same thing. What happens is that Simon Phoenix gets out of the cryo chamber, and at this point, it's so far into the future that there hasn't been a murder for 20 years. The police in that place are more of basically glorified referees or just crossing guards. They don't do much because they don't have to bother with these more violent crimes because there hasn't been one. Now, Simon Phoenix gets out and somehow figures out how to escape the facility and at this point he does some really bad things. He's completely chaotic evil. He rips a guy's eyeball out to take that, and the only thing he can't do is because of how money is processed in the future, he can't buy anything. But that doesn't stop him from causing this reign of chaos throughout the whole plan. So Raymond Cocteau tells the police that they have the authority to do whatever they want to stop Simon Phoenix. And Cocteau has been nurturing and building up this entire utopian society. Now, here's where things get a little awry. Their plan is to bring back John Spartan, who gets the nickname the Demolition Man simply because he won't stop blowing things up. I think there's a report he once blew up a section of a mall worth over $200 million to save a person whose ransom is only $10,000. So they let him out, and he goes, and these guys fight in a whole, start tearing up the places. It's not until later that what John finds out is the reason why Spartan, the only way Simon Phoenix could have gotten out of his prison is if he had the override command codes. The override command codes are only made by Dr. Raymond Cocteau. So he's been force-feeding him and letting him run loose on the city in the attempt to kill the one guy in this utopian future that he can't control, a guy named Edgar Friendly, whose primary goal has been, I just don't want to have to listen to all these rules all the time. He even stays out of society. He goes down into the sewers and lives in the Los Angeles sewer system, and people follow him as a leader. And most of the time when he does any crimes up on the surface, it's simply to steal food. That's it. because he's in the sewers. You can't grow anything down there.
I think that's kind of an example, really, of more of the most common interpretation, I think, of the lawful evil is order is the most important thing here. And if people aren't falling in
Yes.
line with the order as you see it, and that's one of the big things about Demolition Man, is a lot of the things that were quote unquote utopian were actually kind of disturbing. Like, it's not the type of world I would want to live in. But it's the way this guy saw order and law as perfect, was to have these particular rules in place. So it's when other people aren't getting in line with that, what are you going to do about it? That's kind of what makes the difference between a lawful good or a lawful evil person.
Yeah. What's also interesting is essentially all three of these characters are Edgar Friendly, um, Simon Phoenix, and Dr. Octo are all villains in their own right in this movie, but they all have different means for it, which is kind of an interesting take for it. But yeah, essentially, he will do whatever he takes to keep and maintain this lawful, this society, the way he wants the society to go, even if at the cost of sending a psychopath out into the world. Because he sent it out, but he just assumes that that he can actually bring him back into justice, and he can't.
And really, that's kind of flawed thinking. I mean, if you can't take care of the guy who won't follow your rules but isn't violent, how are you going to take care of the guy who won't follow your rules and is violent?
He had a defense mechanism, but Simon Fix figured out a way around that.
You know, there's a game series that I love to death called the Tales of series. Specifically Tales of Zillia. They had a couple villains introduced in that series that were basically just that. They were just fighting for order. Like, there were two big villains in the beginning half of the game, which were Gaius and the king of, oh god, I can't remember his name for the life of me. But basically, the two big villains that you fight in the beginning half of the game were entirely just about maintaining order. Though they had different ideologies on what maintaining order was. One of them wanted to maintain order by taking over the rest of the planet. The other one wanted to maintain order by basically just beating the other guy into submission. And they were both kings, they were both at war, and basically you're just kind of caught up in it in the game. And like, as the main character, because you get to play two main characters in that game and you choose which storyline you follow, the story kind of doesn't really differ, but you get different perspectives.
Is this the series that Nathan really likes?
Yeah, this is the series that Nathan really likes.
I can't remember if it was the Tales of series or the Trails series.
Oh, no. Trails of the Sky, I think it is?
Or Trails of Cold Steel?
Trails of Cold Steel. Tales of Cold Steel.
Something like that.
I think it's the Trails of Cold Steel.
You know what?
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, wait, I don't know if that's the one that Nathan gifted them to me. Hang on, let me go actually. I can find out. If we're just seeing if this is the same series that our friend Nathan likes is all.
It's Trails. Trails of Cold Steel.
Yeah. I just can't. When you said Tales of, I was like, is that the one that Nathan likes, or is it the Trails series that Nathan likes? So I'm just going to look it up really quick. That was all. I just figured while we had a lull.
No, the Tales of and the Trails of are two different series. The Tales of series has like these weird names at the end of their titles, and they're all incredibly different series. But yeah, like most of the Tales of villains, like in almost all of the games, are usually like lawful evil. We want to create order over everything. In fact, Tales of Berseria, you're the bad guy in this story. Like, Tales of Berseria is one giant revenge plot, and you're literally going to kill like the Pope, basically.
Trying to go punch out the Pope.
Like, legitimately, your character's motivation is to go kill the Pope who gave hope to the world to defend against demons.
Yeah, maybe you are the bad guy on this one.
The thing is, though, that you find out later on in the game is that the Pope was the one who actually brought more demons into the world. So you find out that the Pope is the one who brought the demons to the world and brought the salvation to fight the demons at the same time. And now he's doing it again to basically create he's creating a god, basically. And this god will create stagnation in the entire planet. Like, literally everyone will be an emotionless robot following a predetermined path that the god makes. So therefore there is no more demons created and there is peace. But it's basically a super Pyrrhic victory on peace because there's no free will anymore. And it's just this, like, you're the bad guy, but he's way worse.
He's way worse, I guess. I guess we should let it slide.
Yeah. Like, legitimately, your main character is a chick with a demon arm who just, like, eats people through the arm.
Nice. But yeah, so essentially, Lawful Evil, they will maintain that order by any means necessary. Probably, arguably, Darth Vader is the king of the Lawful Evil. Will kill 1,000 people to do the one job. As long as the Emperor's jump, he says, how high?
Yeah, I think they hint at it like it's easier to see in sort of the prequel series where you're sort of watching his as he progresses to being Darth Vader, but like the vast majority of reasons that he turns to evil are self-serving. You know, he kills people because they killed his mother. Was it good that they killed his mother? No, it wasn't, but he killed people that had nothing to do with that. You know, he wants to keep Padme safe. That's like a huge thing on why he's doing all this, is because he believes that even though he's doing all these destructive acts, in the end, it will keep Padme safe. He'll be able, like, he'll get the power to resurrect her, whatever the crap. And you know, it's very poetic, of course, that it winds up doing the exact opposite of that.
But yeah, that's sort of your Lawful Evil in a nutshell. Now, moving on to the next status, it's Chaotic Neutral. Chaotic Neutral is short, from my understanding. It's basically hedonism. It's basically they do what they want.
My favorite chaotic neutral character by far is going to be Harley Quinn, and it'll change a little bit depending on the writer, of course. And plus, she's undergone a lot of character development over the years. So where exactly she falls on the whole good evil thing or lawful chaos thing is a little bit up in the air. But she's pretty much always firmly on the side of chaos. Even when she's fighting alongside Batman, she's mostly doing it because there's going to be some chaos involved.
Yeah. Wouldn't technically Deadpool fit this category too?
Deadpool's yes, but not for our purposes, because Deadpool doesn't.
Yeah, because it's not an antagonist.
Deadpool's not actually the antagonist.
Yeah, but
or has he been an antagonist? Like I think when he started, he was.
He has been. Yeah, he was an antagonist originally. Like he flops, like Harley Quinn. It really kind of like depends if you get the like fourth wall chaos demon Deadpool or the sad clown Deadpool.
Yeah, and it really sort of varies from writer to writer. Like from my understanding, Deadpool now isn't even anywhere near Deadpool that when he started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Harley Quinn. I think the reason she's not evil is because whereas the Joker has no limits, Harley Quinn does have limits. There are things that the Joker does that she's not really on board for. And she goes along with it because she's in love with him. But, she always kind of regrets doing it. When she separates from the Joker, she starts doing more heroic things, but never to the point where she's not a little self-serving.
Yeah. Never to that point.
She's 100% willing to sacrifice her own needs for the needs of others. And she's also willing to sacrifice the needs of others to satisfy her own needs.
They move around a lot. That isn't exactly a straight line. It just wiggles a bit. But yeah, chaotic. So they'll satisfy their needs, or sometimes that they're just a rebel without a clue or without a cause. In some cases, they're fighting the establishment.
Yeah.
Why? And essentially, the big thing about it is a lot of times these guys aren't necessarily going to do evil acts. They have a line for themselves. A weird example for that is in the movie Thor Ragnarok. Suitor, the giant Jotunheim that who's has a giant fiery sword who's made entirely fire. His goal is to destroy Asgard. That is it. How when I get there, I'll get there. But I'm going to destroy Asgard. By the time they bring him out to Asgard and he comes up, he does. He trashes Asgard. He doesn't know that everyone's gone, and nor does he care. He's got one job, breaking Asgard, and I'm done.
Yeah, it's literally my job is to break this place. It's to tear this location down so it can be rebuilt. That's it. I don't give a shit if they're actually here or not. My job is to just break the place down. It's like a construction guy. Like, look, I'm here to blow.
Yo, I'm just here to break this down. Yo,
look, I'm here to blow up the building by 5. You know, Ragnarok, it has to happen. It just needs to get done.
An interesting one who plays on this, even though he's got crazy, almost godlike powers, is Q from, especially in Star Trek Next Generation. Pretty much wants to mess with Picard, whatever.
He's not really evil, he's just bored.
And he's helped people out with his powers. He's not helped people out. Just sort of on the whims and the whimsy. The only thing he kind of regrets is maybe introducing the big bad of the Borg into the series, but you can't get it right all the time. Or another one, and this is a kind of an interesting one, is Andrew Ryan is pretty much chaotic and neutral. As long as it doesn't affect Ryan, Rapture can go to, from Bioshock, Rapture can go to hell, all he cares.
I think I'd actually kind of disagree on that one.
I would too, actually. I feel like Rapture is his baby. Like, he came up with the idea from it. He created it. Like, he had the help with, obviously, he's not like an engineer or anything. He had a ton of help, but that was his project. That was his baby, based on, he saw the things that he didn't like about the world and about things that happened to him growing up, and he wanted something different and what he thought was better. So
Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think you're right. I think he is chaotic neutral. Because the thing that he believed in more than anything else was economics. The invisible hand.
Yeah. Wasn't his end goal to literally just get the things he needs so he can rebuild Rapture?
Kind of.
So, Andrew's sort of, whole guiding principle was that a man has a right to what he has made, essentially.
To the sweat of his brow.
Yeah, he rejected capitalism because the government, the United States government, would take taxes, and he didn't feel that was right. And he rejected communism because they took kind of everything. That, what you made wasn't yours at all.
Yeah.
And so he built Rapture on the idea that if you make it, it is yours.
Okay.
He also had very few. It was important to him to have extremely few rules. And so, because he didn't want, a lot of interference in each person making their way. So there was a severe lack of rules, because the more that there were, the more he felt it would hinder creativity. And
sorry, you go on.
So a lot of people that went down to Rapture were controversial artists. There was one doctor who had Parkinson's and was told that he couldn't do surgery anymore, and he was devastated by the news, and so he was like, I want to, and Andrew Ryan was like, well, come on down to Rapture. But that's actually one of the things that happened. And he just wanted people to make their own way however they felt that was necessary. And I read, so in the prequel novel, there's this one scene in particular that always really stood out to me, and it's Andrew Ryan walking with Ed McDonough, who was a plumber and who actually helped work on a lot of the water issues within Rapture. And they're walking down like one of the main roads or main areas in Rapture, and this grocer comes running out of his store and is like, that grocer over there, Grocer B, I don't remember names, but he was like, Grocer B keeps dumping his trash in front of my store, and people don't come in my store anymore because it smells out front. What are you going to do about it? And Andrew Ryan was like, what am I going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Like, get back at him, throw his trash back at his store, or take his trash out and make your store nice again. Like, what are you going to do about it? I'm not going to do anything about it. And the guy gets so distressed over the fact that he won't, and like nobody will stand up for him when he is in this distressful situation. And so he runs inside, grabs a gun, and kills himself.
Yeesh.
So, in other words, like, Andrew Ryan, his entire philosophy is on, like, self-efficacy and self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Personal freedom is his whole deal.
Everyone...
And that means no protection.
Yeah, it's literally you do everything yourself.
A man is entitled to the sweat of his brow.
And I think actually a big part of the plot, and I think the reason why Andrew Ryan is such a memorable villain is because he doesn't actually stick to those principles.
Yeah.
As you go through the game, so you're like you're getting all these like logs and stuff of what happened before Rapture went to crap. And you find out he'd been investing in real estate, he was, and especially down under the ocean, real estate's kind of a big deal. There's not a lot of livable space. And so that's what he was putting all his money into.
Comes back to real estate.
But then, along come all of these, the splice eaters, and like here now everyone can suddenly have superpowers and genetic manipulation and all that. He didn't really see that arms race coming. He didn't see that business opportunity before it was too late to get in on the ground floor. And he started losing money. And then he decided, no, I'm not going to lose money. And that's when he started doing things like he nationalized the public park, Arcadia, basically making it his because he's the mayor down there or whatever the crap. Like, he's in charge government-wise, and he says this is his now.
He annexed the whole place?
He did.
Wow.
And he had, in fact, previously, before founding Rapture, he had a park that the government was going to take over and turn into a national park, and so he burned it to the ground just to keep that from happening.
That is...
So now he went and did it himself as soon as it was a problem for him.
That's so interesting.
Oh, Andrew Ryan's fascinating villain.
I could never play BioShock because I would always get too scared. I have...
It's a scary game.
I have, like...
I'm not gonna lie.
I have such a low bar for horror. It's hilarious, really.
I love horror games. I'll play them and stream them.
There's this webcomic that I read called Hardcore Leveling Warrior. And like the end-all antagonist, it's basically theory of the game of the comic is you get to play a MMO in your sleep. Like it transports your consciousness while your body is sleeping into this game world, and it's just a giant MMO, and the main character is an asshole. Like, legitimately, he was the top #1 player on in the game, and he was a dick, and he got hacked, and his profile got reset to level 1. By the end of the comic, you find out that like the big villain is this like coalition of bad emotions, more or less, and it forms this kind of chaos god. The chaos god legitimately does not give a shit about the players, does not give a shit about his own creations. Like, they legitimately don't care about the world or anything. All they want to do is go to the real world. And the entire latter half of the show is this force of destruction and chaos destroying the entire game world, to more or less manifest itself onto Earth.
Oh, that's not a good thing.
And they succeed, by the way. Like, this is huge spoilers for like the last couple chapters. They succeed. They get to go to Earth, and they love Earth. They love Earth so much they want to be connected to it forever. But it's so chaotic. It's so unbalanced and unpolished. So they start to merge with the planet.
Oh man, this new MMO, Earth, not as cool as I thought going in there. Needs a patch update really good.
Like, that's actually what they call it in the story. They call it a fucking patch update. When she starts merging, it's literally, it has an update bar across the planet.
Seriously, Earth has some super balance issues.
It's a really good comic. Hardcore Leveling Warrior is probably one of my most favorite main characters ever, because it's the epitome of like a jackass who's good not because he's overpowered, it's because he knows how to do things. Yeah, that would probably be like my example of chaotic neutral. Is like they weren't like trying to do evil. They weren't trying to do good. They were just trying to get their one thing done.
So the next op in this is the true neutral. Now, it's kind of weird to think of it as a true neutral antagonist, but you kind of have to relative as it's easier to think about it as balance. A true neutral antagonist typically doesn't. They don't. It's not about order. It's not about chaos. And it's not about the law. It's not about how they're perceived in society. They just want the status quo to stay if they can do it. An interesting one that I bumped into, as far as for an example of a villain, is it's a character named Agent Sands. He's in this movie called Once Upon a Time in Mexico. If you ever see, it's the third part of a trilogy. First is El Mariachi, second is Desperado, and the third one is Once Upon a Time in Mexico. And what he wants to do is to level the playing field in Mexico. So he has this general who has been making trouble south of Mexico, and he also has this president who wants to reform a bunch of stuff in Mexico as well. But at the same time, a drug dealer, a massive drug cartel, is also wanting to collect a whole bunch of power in Mexico. And so, in order for him to he wants to put all three of these guys in the same area. And because of that, it'll trigger it'll trigger a mass fight between all three of these factions. But to make sure that everything goes the way that it's supposed to, he convinces the El Mariachi, or a character from those movies, to come in to kill the general because the general killed his wife. So so the general kills his wife. Meanwhile, the drug dealers, because he has this recognized Thor notoriety of going in Mexico, going to places and killing drug cartels and drug dealers all the time, that the drug dealers will stop him, so there's no vigilantism. And if everything goes right, a mass riot will come in and deal with the president, and it's just a mess. Essentially, to remove these three big factions out of Mexico, he was going to put them all to fight together. And he just sort of wants to step out of the whole thing and just let it go. Who wins, who loses? But it'll at least level out the playing field in this place.
See, I think that's sort of the difficulty in getting a true neutral character, is what is it that they do? You know, if they're not motivated, to keep order, and they're not motivated to disobey order, if they're not motivated by their own self-interest or the interest of the public good, what are they motivated by, and what do they do? And I mean, even the idea of neutrality means that you generally don't act when most people would.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very much goes against what antagonists are supposed to do in your story.
Yeah, it is a difficult one.
Yeah, there's one good example I could think of, and it's also from JoJo's. The big bad of part 4 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Diavolo, like legitimately, his entire plan, his entire goal is to never be found. That's it. Like legitimately, he's this big super mob boss who's feared by everyone. Nobody in his own gang knows his face. And his entire thing is that he just doesn't want to be found out ever. And so he seeks out this like the power up for the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure stand powers. I know this very like loosely, but I do know the general idea, and it basically Diavolo's entire ideology is I just want to keep my business running and not be found out by anyone. And he like has this split personality disorder where he has Diavolo and then like Polpo or something like that. I don't remember what the other one was. JoJo's names are weird. JoJo's is weird.
JoJo itself is weird.
Basically like yeah, so like the original personality is just this really timid, meek person who was like thrown into juvie as a kid. He was born in juvie and had to basically be raised in prison. It scarred him enough growing up in that environment that it gave him two personalities. And one is the super meek, super like, I don't want to touch anything. I don't want to get involved with anyone. And then the other one is, you saw me, you die, and I'm going to kill everyone else who's going to try and find you.
If you're talking about a villain, and this is only an antagonist to literally Zap Brannigan has a thing about the neutrals because he doesn't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I love the neutrals.
I love that. He goes, "Sir, we're having a beige alert.
Tell my wife I said hello."
See, the neutrals is kind of an interesting take on it because they're sort of not antagonists.
They're not in general, but that's not what Zap.
They're antagonists because Zap Brannigan is a protagonist, but he's only a protagonist in that he's the focus character.
Yeah, is Zap really a protagonist?
He is. He's not a good guy.
Well, I mean, I guess protagonist,
he is a protagonist, and that's the important.
Protagonist and hero are two different things. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that's true. That's the reason why Leo said this is about the alignments of antagonists, not villains.
True neutral is the hardest thing to write because realistically, as long as the main character stops putting their nose in the business of a true neutral antagonist, nothing happens.
Pretty much.
You literally just have to have like the nosiest person as your main character to make a true neutral antagonist.
I mean, one of the big issues with the alignment system that most people are going to run into is that it's kind of extreme.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
We generally identify as lawful good, right? But like when you really get into it, going full lawful means ignoring personal freedoms, and nobody wants that. You know, going full good means never getting what you want and always sacrificing for yourself and never getting anything in return. People might say they want that, but they really don't. And so, in truth, most people are actually looking for a balance, and that's what true neutral represents. So it's hard to write that as a bad guy.
There is a way I've seen it done, though. Final Fantasy X has Sin, which is one of the big bosses in Final Fantasy X. Sin is neither good nor evil. Sin is a destructive force, though.
So it's basically nature. You know, there's actually in Fate Stay Night, there is the Holy Grail. You know, the big thing for Fate Stay Night. Originally, the Holy Grail was a true neutral item. It just granted your desires. It was just a big, massive magical energy that could do whatever you wanted. And then it got corrupted because basically people wanted more from it, and that's when it changed to this like chaotic evil monkey's paw. It went from a wish granting device to a, oh, you made a wish, okay, time to blow up like a third of the planet.
Look, probably shouldn't have asked for all of that. Bring it down some.
Like legitimately you could ask it for something super stupid, like, oh, I want, to be really tall. Okay, so it's going to kill everybody that's taller than you.
Reminds me of Calypso from Twisted Metal. Any ending that you got was twisted around by Calypso. Sets up the whole Twisted Metal competition and steps away. Calypso will grant his reward is you will get your wish. You guys can go to whoever's the last survivor of this match. Calypso don't care. Nobody thinks about talking themselves down, destroy part of the United States, whatever. And then whenever somebody talks to Calypso to get the reward, he's like, "Yep, I will give you that reward." And it's always like a monkey's paw situation.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, originally like the Holy Grail was this super neutral relic. It still kind of screwed you over. Because the entire essence of the Holy Grail War was, oh yeah, you're gonna summon people and kill them. That's it. You're just gonna sacrifice some souls to this object, and you, one of you guys can get a wish. One of you out of the 7.
6 are not coming back. I think that's sort of all I've got for the true neutral. Now, moving on to a different one for antagonists is lawful neutral. Not lawful neutral is a very interesting place because essentially the law is the law. That's sort of how lawful neutral understands understands this. They're doing this act because that is what the law says to do. You've got a lot of straw man characters, a lot of characters that after thinking about it, know they should be asking the questions. Um, a good example of that is if you ever watched the original 1982, the original 1980s Ghostbusters. One of their antagonists is Walter Peck, an EPA government agent whose plan is to shut down the Ghostbusters. Why he's shutting down the Ghostbusters is because they don't have a license for any of their highly experimental radiation-filled equipment. Like, they know it works. They know it's working fine. But the EPA has no idea how to even classify what they've got. And so, like, yeah, he kind of has a point.
Yeah, lawful neutral is a weird one.
So I'm trying to think, and I haven't seen the actual movie, so it's difficult for me to say whether or not this is a great example. But I remember The Fugitive, and there's the guy that's chasing Harrison Ford.
Oh, the U.S. Marshal, yeah.
Yeah, and so like, Harrison Ford is innocent. He knows he's innocent. The law don't know that. The law wants to take him in. And so the marshal sort of represents that. I'm going to take you in. It doesn't matter to me whether you're good or evil, or even whether you're innocent or guilty. My job is to take you in, and that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, there's a great line from it, and it's in the trailer. So, like, Harrison Ford is standing at the side of this. Gets to the escape from the marshal. They get to the edge of this dam, which is all this water's running, and he's stuck between jumping off, a dam and the U.S. Marshal. And he turns to the U.S. Marshal. He tells him, "I didn't kill my wife." And the U.S. Marshal's response to that is, "I don't care." He literally does. This is just what I have to do here. This is the law says I need to bring you in, and now's the time to do that.
I recently watched this weird show called Scissor 7 on Netflix. The show is basically just like, oh yeah, you're an assassin. The main character is an assassin. And it's kind of episodic, so there's like a different antagonist every episode kind of thing. In one of the episodes, just bodyguard was hired by a dude, and 7 was hired to kill the guy who the bodyguard who hired the bodyguard. And so he like legitimately this bodyguard was just a dude who obeyed the law and was just doing his job protecting a guy. and like he was the antagonist, and like Seven tried to sneak attack and tried like underhanded tactics, and every time this bodyguard would just come straight into his face and just go like, yeah, I'm here to protect this guy, stop being a wuss and fight me one-on-one, face to face. And yeah, you go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was going on to a new one real quick. But so with this, now, as Rob has mentioned before, remember, lawful doesn't always mean the law. Lawful can also mean a strict, rigid code. Now, this is where the Brotherhood of Steel falls in as an antagonist. The Brotherhood of Steel is a bunch of jerks. For the most part, with the exception of like a couple of exceptions, the Brotherhood of Steel are a bunch of jerks. But their codifier for the Brotherhood of Steel from Fallout is find advanced technology, keep advanced technology.
And like they have some semi quasi noble motivations for doing this, because I mean, let's face it, the world of Fallout is very chaotic. The vast majority of people that the Brotherhood of Steel is dealing with are bandits. So, when 90% of your population is out to kill not the other 90%, it's everybody's out to kill everybody. It makes sense to keep the most dangerous weapons out of their hands. But the thing is, they're not good because they're not putting the advanced weaponry in the hands of good people who need to defend themselves. They'll take the technology from those people as well.
It's literally just consolidation for them.
Yeah, like a really good example is in Fallout New Vegas. There's a but this is a real place, by the way, is a giant solar farm in the Mojave Desert near Las Vegas. Okay,
Helios 1, I believe it was called.
it's called in the game Helios 1. It actually has a different name in the real world. But yeah, Helios 1. If it was up to the Brotherhood of Steel, they would destroy Helios 1 rather than let anybody else have this have free power.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's super advanced technology, and one of the key things, it's difficult in a post-apocalyptic wasteland to make electricity. And Helios 1 is a giant solar farm. The sun didn't go away. You'll get sun, you'll get power. Like, I think you get the option of moving the power level to New Vegas, or because you can reroute the power to go to New Vegas, or reroute the power to go to this other spot.
Well, so it's a little bit more complicated than that. The real reason that the Brotherhood of Steel wanted to keep Helios 1 out of anybody else's hands is because that it was secretly being used to make a super weapon. You could basically, there's a satellite up in the sky that collects the energy and fires down a laser onto the planet. That's what Helios 1's true purpose is. And they wanted to keep that.
They have an orbital cannon?
Yeah.
They wanted to keep that out of anybody's hands. That's the whole reason they were trying to protect it. The fact that Helios 1 could also be used, or instead be used, to provide power to the people in the area and not be used for a destructive force at all is irrelevant to them. It can be used as a weapon, therefore it needs to be kept out of people's hands. And if that means destroying it, that means destroying it. Your quest as a player, one of your options is to basically disable the weapon. And that's if you're like part of the Brotherhood of Steel, that winds up being your quest, is you disable the weapon so that it's not a threat anymore. And then who you give the power to is actually more of a choice between the NCR and New Vegas than between the Brotherhood and anyone else. The Brotherhood doesn't really care where the power goes after that.
But that's their credo. That's what the Brotherhood does. And it's kind of sad throughout most of Fallout, because if you explore for the Brotherhood, they have the means to try to help out the world. They just choose not to, because that's not part of their credo.
And there's sort of a big deal with in 3. One of the reasons a lot of people criticized 3 was because the Brotherhood started helping people. But in game, in story, that was actually a huge deal for them. This faction that started helping people was officially considered a separate faction from the regular Brotherhood of Steel because they weren't following the Brotherhood's credo. anymore. They were doing something else. They weren't being they were wanted to be lawful good instead of lawful neutral, and the Brotherhood's not okay with that.
Yeah, so that's your lawful neutral. Lawful neutral will always try. Well, basically, they go for the letter of the law on that. I don't know if anybody has any other lawful neutral characters they can think of or antagonists.
I can't think of anything.
All right, so we'll go on to the next one. Now, this is where things get a little interesting. This is the good side of things. Good in air quotation marks, depending on how you put it. So let's start with the relatively easier one of these to do. This is the chaotic good category. Now, chaotic good is doing essentially good deeds, but the rules kind of are squiggly. They're very liquidy. They're not exactly there. So this is where a lot of your anti-heroes, your Robin Hood types, but you can have antagonists and villains on it. Some of the ones that are out there are just sort of how you put it. The Punisher, at least in the Spider-Man run, the early Spider-Man run of comics, the Punisher was a Spider-Man villain. Still had the same rule set. But if the Punisher thinks you're an evil dude, the Punisher is going to shoot you.
Yeah, there was like a very strict black and white with early Punisher. It was literally just, you did a small petty theft of like taking a couple bucks from a beggar's hat. Time to get shot.
The Punisher don't care. An interesting one is, and the thing with a lot of these villains, and antagonists, they start as antagonists and then they sort of evolve into something else later. A lot of times, a really good example is Jet from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Jet's first introduced, has plans to stop this, to take out this dam to stop the encroaching Fire Nation. Right? It's not until later that there's people down there, and this particular part of the Fire Nation isn't actually doing anything wrong. They're doing certain things wrong. I forget, but not much. They're still helping out all these refugees that are there.
So like what Jet's kind of an interesting example, a really interesting character because it's a deconstruction of the Robin Hood type. It's what happens when you take that to the extreme, which is really what makes you an antagonist. Is when you take any of these motivations too far. Because he's down with rules, he's down with society. He don't like that. He wants to be on his own and he wants to be free. And here's the Fire Nation. They are pretty, they're evil. They're starting a war. They're killing people. They're the bad guys. He doesn't differentiate though between civilians and soldiers, and that's really where the problem comes in. He wants to take out a town full of civilians because they are Fire Nation civilians.
It's literally just he fights against the nation of the Fire Nation, not the bad part of the Fire Nation.
He's not fighting the military of the Fire Nation. He's just fighting the Fire Nation as a whole. And in his eyes, that's a good thing. And that's kind of the important part here. He doesn't see it as an evil act.
He sees it as a good act because of how it's happening on that.
Like to expand on that, technically, like early Zuko could probably qualify in the good category of one of the three like areas, because he thought he was doing the good by doing this mission for his father. It was not specifically because he was doing good that he did it. It was because of the fact that he was ordered, but still the fact of the matter was his belief in killing the Avatar would bring good things for the Fire Nation.
Like, he stopped the Fire Nation's biggest adversary.
Yeah. And like the thing about good antagonists or good aligned antagonists is their belief in what they're doing is right and just for the betterment of people. And I've always thought that was really interesting. A lot of like antagonists that I usually make in D&D games are usually chaotic good, where they do have an end goal that is good, but it's just the means that they use to get there that qualifies them as antagonists to most people.
I'll save the city, but I'll also end up accidentally burning down half the city while I'm doing it.
I think actually that burning down half the city while I'm doing it is part of what makes it difficult to make a chaotic good antagonist. Because as readers, as consumers of content, we like a little chaos. In fact, in a lot of cases, we like a lot of chaos. Explosions are fun to watch, but we can't do that in real life. Um, so here's a guy who's causing explosions, and maybe he's misguided, but he's trying to do it for the right reasons. You instinctively want to root for that guy.
The only time that it becomes like a bad guy scenario for that specifically is when actual people are getting hurt. And it is framed in a way where what they're doing isn't good for people. And it like Rob said, it's really hard to write that.
Mhm.
And so, like, in that instance, it's actually a matter of perspective. And I don't necessarily mean like what's truly good and evil. I mean like the perspective of the camera. How zoomed in are you on that chaos? You know, if the camera is zoomed out and you just see a city explode, but you don't see any bodies, you don't feel so guilty about that. But if you're zoomed in on the explosion and there's blood everywhere and there's children crying because they're like missing arms or some crap like that, suddenly it's evil. But realistically, that is exactly what happened in the first instance. You just didn't see it.
There's a old quote from Mel Brooks, famous comedy director Mel Brooks, and somebody asked him, let's say you asked him about this, proposed this question about that, and he goes, "Here's the difference between comedy and tragedy. Let's say you have a guy falling down the stairs. If you are within a few feet, that's a draw. That's tragedy. You zoom out, and it's 100 feet out. This is comedy. The difference between drama and comedy is the lens." There was an episode of an old Cartoon Network show called Megas XLR, and the main character, the main hero of the story, his name is Coop, is destroying, who just regularly on the regular will destroy cities. Just people happen to not be there. There's a villain that he's trying to stop. The villain quits because he assumes that Coop is the villain of this place and is just way more evil than I am because of all this needless destruction.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. So can I go on a little side tangent on how I built a chaotic good villain?
Sure, I guess.
So in my previous D&D campaign that Rob was a part of, the final antagonist was a guy named Tadel Gokind. Realistically, by every single descriptor I gave of this guy, you thought he was this chaotic evil villain. He was super fucking evil. He would just murder people left and right. He had super boss monsters as pets that he would just send out and just murder entire swaths of armies. And he took over one of the most powerful nations on my planet. Come later, the party found out the reason why he did all of this bullshit and was trying to go back into the past to kill basically the mixture between like Santa and Jesus.
Santa Jesus.
Like Santa Jesus mixed with Chuck Norris. That's who this guy was trying to go back in time to kill. The reason why he did all of this was to basically wipe out the gods, because the gods did not care about people. The gods were very neutral. They literally just let the world play out as it were and never really involved themselves. And Tadel hated the fact that they basically had a big brother that if they went too out of line, they would get wiped out. And so he sought out to basically change history. But the thing is, doing so would kill so many people and wipe out so much of history. And the party had to stop that. Not and they they ended up doing it not because of the gods telling them to, but they chose to do it because in reality they didn't want their lives to change. They didn't want all these people to get erased. I don't know what Etham's main goal for defeating Tadel was, but
Ethan's goal is pretty much that. Yeah, I mean, despite Tadel's good intentions, he was doing way too much harm. And good intentions in kind of quotation marks.
yeah, like legitimately he was like murdering so many people to achieve an end goal that would have granted a lot more free will to people, but it would have also made a lot of things a lot more difficult. And he just didn't see that far.
Okay.
Sorry.
See? No, you're fine. So yeah, but yeah, that's sort of Lawful Good.
Leo's just not good at like transitions.
Neither am I.
Let's just star wipe this part.
Speaking of transitions, neutral good. Thoughts?
Yeah, so neutral good personally is probably the most difficult antagonist I could think of to do next to like true neutral, because neutral good tends to be doing good for the good. And it's a lot more of from the way I've seen it on this one, is it's a lot more in the aspect of, or how the person is actually doing the action in order of to do good, that makes it neutral. And then you have to kind of question if this is actually a good thing or not. So I found some very, it was hard to find, but I found a couple of references that I could work with on this one. One of the ones I found is in the show Supernatural. At some point, there's an episode with a character named Amy Pond. No relation to the Doctor Who character, also named Amy Pond, like a demon fox. I couldn't say something like that. Anyway,
Kitsune.
Kitsune. Thank you. So she's a Kitsune, and one of the things that the Kitsunes do is that they have to feed off brains of people. Now, our main hero of the story, Sam Winchester, bumped into Amy Pond at the early on in their life. And Sam had the opportunity to kill this monster just like he does with any other monster, but decided to let her go. Sam regrets it. It's been years and years and years later, and he bumps into her, to Amy again, and so Sam decides to talk to her and try to figure out what's going on with that. As it turns out, Amy Pond, even though she's a Kitsune, hasn't done anything like evil or bad or anything. In fact, what she did was she got a degree in medical science so she could work at the morgue, so she could bring home the brains of dead corpses and just feed off of that. Technically stealing, still, not, the guy's not using it anymore, really. This became a problem, though, because what happens is that Amy Pond has a son, and her son, because she's so young, is getting sick from eating so much dead brains because he hasn't had any fresh brains. And at some point, she does some research, tries to find these worst, terrible, terrible people so she can kill them, take their brains, bring it home to heal her son. All the people that she's killing are all really, really bad people, though. But because these people are dying is what brings the attention of Sam and Dean Winchester to go hunt them down. So, is their antagonist, but realistically, has he done anything bad?
Like, it's very much a vigilantism kind of angle for that character in particular. So here's a neutral good antagonist that I have, which is Lupin the Third. Lupin is a thief. Like, Lupin is literally just like a thief with a heart of gold, Robin Hood-esque character. He is chased by an Interpol detective every single time. And this detective is legitimately a good person. He acts in the safety of others. He is a like generally good person who usually ends up working with Lupin when he learns about how bad the villains are. But until then, he is literally just hounding him. And then as soon as the like villain is defeated, the actual like villain of the plot is defeated, he just goes back to being an antagonist for Lupin again and just starts chasing him down.
So I don't think Lupin fits in here, not because he's not a villain, but because he's not an antagonist. No. He's actually a protagonist.
No, I mean the detective that chases him, the Interpol detective.
Detective Zenigata?
That's the name. I kept forgetting his name.
Inspector Zenigata.
or Inspective.
Oh, literally was telling me about this earlier today.
Well, the thing is, Inspector Senegata is not really neutral good as a thing. He is lawful good. He is obeying the law, sometimes to a fault.
Yeah, he is a
Okay.
lawful good.
Often to a fault.
Well, I mean,
actually.
he does bend the rules to work with Lupin.
A little, but I mean, you can bend the rules a little and still be lawful. Like his whole
That's
modus
true.
operandi is that he's working for the law.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
It's just to him, good is more important.
Yeah. It's basically all been the rule when it's absolutely needed, not when it's more convenient.
So the reason why this one kind of falls under neutral good is on the basis that still killing people, not good. However, the people that are killing are super bad people, and the cause is just because the cause is literally to keep her son alive.
Yeah, I think this is where you're going to run into a lot of problems with antagonists because, as a general rule, you don't want your readers to root for the antagonists. And for the most part, neutral good characters are characters you're going to root for.
This kind of reminds me of an old anime that I watched a long time ago called The Legend of Legendary Heroes.
There's 2 legends in that.
Yes, it's a long title and it's a really weird show, but like the way the story is set up, one of the antagonists of the story is written as a hero through the entire story. And he's not a lawful hero. He literally kills and manipulates and works his way up to becoming king. But they make it justified and written like this man is a good person because he's doing all of this to better the kingdom and better the people, and he's sacrificing his freedom and abilities and all this stuff to do this. And by the end of the show, he has become this weird mixture of everything I do is for the kingdom. So everything, all the kingdom sees him as like a saint and a hero, but everyone else sees him as a monster because he will literally just wipe towns out because they have a threat to the kingdom. And the main character worked for him until basically he became too dangerous to work with, so they threw him in jail, and then he had to break out and basically run away from the king. Like, some of the people he kills aren't even like justifiably evil. They're not like villains or bandits or anything like that. It's like, oh, there's a theory or an idea that they're hiding. There's some people hiding in this village. He doesn't even confirm if it's whether they are or not. He'll just kill the village. Like, but every time he does something, everyone's like, oh, he's a hero. He just defended us. And it's like, it's that weird dichotomy of neutral good is, again, one of those things about perspective. The good aligned antagonists, the good aligned antagonists are all really hard because it's all about perspective. Who sees them as good and who sees them as evil is really up to where the camera lens is.
Yeah. One I bumped into, there's a CW show called Stargirl, and in the first season of it, the final, you see, and it's all about legacy. So there's the kids of the adults who were part of the Injustice Society of America, right? And these are some bad people, Solomon Grundy, and they're all DC characters, so like Solomon Grundy, the Magician, Icicle, and Tigress, Sportsmaster. So all of these villains, right? So you find they've been doing these weird acts all over the place, doing all these bad things for it, and then they finally get to the end where they can implement their manifesto, and they bring up a giant satellite dish to put thoughts into the minds of all the of people all across the United States, which are to recycle, reuse some of their stuff, and basically be better people. That's their plan at the end.
Literally just mind control the masses into recycling. That's
mind controlling the masses into recycling, using less fuel, taking care of the environment, growing your own gardens to help out with food. I'm like, At some point, even the heroes are sitting going,
Are
should we even stop this?
like they're not doing anything. Like, should we?
Should we?
So actually, I think probably a good example, and again, this is open to debate, would be Poison Ivy. Because it's not so much, she's not really against the law per se. She's not going out like breaking the law for the sake of breaking the law, like so many Batman villains are. But really her sort of big thing is that she values plants as much as or better than humans.
Yeah.
And so she's an eco-terrorist. What her primary motivation the vast majority of the time is someone's polluting and killing the plants, and I have to stop them. And she does that by murder. And if it weren't for the fact that she protected plants by murdering people, Batman would probably never even try to stop her.
Yeah, probably not.
You had me up until murder. That's where I had to draw the line.
Just like Poison Ivy comes and just goes like, "Hey, I've got a great plan to save the planet." Okay, what's the plan? Pulls out a gun. That's the plan.
All right. Might want to table that. Maybe have a discussion. I'm not taking it off the table. Not saying no. Just saying, let's see if there's another plan we got on this.
I can also stab someone.
Once again, thinking good thoughts. There's no wrong answers here. It sounds like a bad pitch me. So
right?
Yeah. So I think we'll move on to the last one. And the last one is probably the most decisive, but because it's so extreme. And that would be Lawful Good. Lawful Good is both doing good and being and obeying the rules of society, being the law and being good. This is where antagonists can get kind of difficult because your antagonists generally by nature should be evil or chaotic or something that you kind of need to stop. Why are you stopping a lawful good? And this either has to deal with perspective or extremism is sort of the two big ways I've seen where this kind of works out. Like we were talking about it before, Inspector Zenigata. Yeah, Inspector Zenigata from Lupin the Third is an Interpol agent, but at no point will he bother to do anything that's crazy violent. And his primary goal is and he will arrest anybody else if they're more dangerous than Lupin.
See, Inspector Zenigata I always thought was kind of a fun character because it's not that he's bad at his job. It's that Lupin is better. And so he's been chasing Lupin for literal decades. And like every now and again, he does get the upper hand, but it's pretty much only because Lupin wants him to. The only times Zenigata successfully arrests Lupin and actually gets him into jail is because Lupin needed to get into jail.
If I remember correctly, in the more recent Lupin movie, he legitimately calls Zenigata to come arrest him so they can get a helicopter to go to the villain.
Yes. Because they're out in the middle of literal nowhere, just like a freaking desert, going to die of thirst. How are they going to get here? I know one man who will go to any corner of the earth to reach me.
I think that was the actual line.
And that is Inspector Zenigata. But like But the thing is, like, as soon as a more powerful villain comes along, or a more evil villain comes along than Lupin, Zenigata goes after them. Because he understands that Lupin, even though he's unlawful, isn't really evil. You know, he's a thief primarily. He really doesn't kill very often. And the people that he kills are pretty much exclusively bad guys. So, who am I going to go after? The thief who kills bad guys? Or the guy who's trying to take over a country and murdering people all along the way? Yeah, probably going to go after the serial killer. That's more important right now. And that's why he keeps his job, because he's got this impressive rap sheet of capturing villains that Lupin was going against.
Would Injustice Superman count for a lawful good?
In this context, yes, because ultimately his goal is the betterment, is to be good and to be better. So, okay, kind of having to backtrack a bit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of have to
Yeah.
explain Injustice and the Injustice games and such for that, or that one. So, short story of this one: Joker gets tired of dealing with Batman. Joker decides to go after Superman instead. So, one of the things Joker does is kill Lois Lane.
Well, he has Superman kill Lois Lane.
Oh yeah, he has Superman kill Lois Lane. Yeah, and when he does that, Superman comes back, super pissed off, and kills the Joker. Straight up, just takes him out. And when he does that, he puts sort of this big rift between him and all of the others, or other Justice League members, on the basis that I've just finally had it. I'm any of these supervillains that are just up to no good. I'm just taking them out. Screw the rules on it.
Like he literally just said, "I'm tired of playing Mr. Nice Guy. I am just flat out like I'm making my world order in the end."
And so he does become basically all of the lawfulness in the world because he makes order, controls order on that. And at the same time, I mean, there's no the amount of murders that are out there have gone significantly down. Crime has gone down because most people are afraid of having to deal with Superman. Technically, doing a bunch of good and being lawful, Superman's still an over controlling jerk at this point, though.
There was a video I watched a long time ago that said the most interesting villains are paragons. Basically, the best heroes make the most wonderful antagonists because they're unshaking in their determination and in their like kind of like with chaotic evil. You can't negotiate with a lawful good antagonist. They're just rock solid in what they believe. Like Zenigata, I think would be the kind of one of the like we said, you can't ever get Zenigata to do anything unlawful. He will always go with the side of the law,
Actually,
but he will take the worst out of the situation.
so it actually kind of reminds me. There's this webcomic that I really love, really popular. You guys have probably heard of it, Order of the Stick. Um,
Yeah.
there's a character in there. I believe her name was Miko, but she was a samurai, and she was lawful good to the most extreme of lawful good. Like other paladins couldn't stand her because of how stalwart she was in her lawfulness, and any tiny deviation out of lawfulness or goodness was to be met with extreme measures, and that's what made her an antagonist. You know, she was fighting against the heroes. Her goal was, please bring these heroes to me. And it's, the king is asking her. The king technically wants them to stand trial, but really he wants to hire them, and he just has to do it in kind of a roundabout way. She decides the king is asking for these people, they must be pure evil, and so she treats them as such. And like even afterwards, even after she finds out that they're ostensibly the good guys and they are trying to save the world, she never really treats them with respect. She's always kind of hostile towards them, even if she's not actively fighting them. And she winds up, she's so certain in her view of what is lawful and what is good that even when she does an objectively unlawful evil act, she can't perceive it that way. So like she winds up killing the king because she finds out that he is doing some manipulations behind the scenes, because that's how royal intrigue works. When she does it, she loses her paladin status. The gods revoke their powers from her because she just committed a chaotic evil act. But she can't even comprehend that was that. Obviously, my paladin powers being taken away must be some sort of test from the gods. And it doesn't actually mean that what I've done was wrong.
You done murdered. Nah, that can't be it.
No, that's not evil. I killed a bad guy that wasn't a bad guy, but he was doing bad things. He was doing his job. You know what? Never mind.
He was doing debatably bad things.
Like, it's perceptionally bad. I honestly think the Navy from One Piece would like the world government and Navy would totally fit into this scenario. Because One Piece is about pirates, and obviously the antagonists to pirates is the law. Specifically, like the commander, later on in the series, he becomes a commander of the navy, and his name's like Akanu or something. He's a lava man, and like legitimately there were navy members who would work with pirates, who would like willingly work with pirates. They even had privateers. They had hired pirates to capture other pirates. As soon as Akinu came into power, he put on a wanted notice for all of those privateers, and he sentenced them all to basically be thrown into the clink. All of them. It did not matter. Anybody who waved a pirate flag was going to be either killed or captured.
You done pirating? That's all I need to hear.
Yeah, like he was so, even to the most recent chapters, he's so dead set on just like unflinching and unflexible. Like, even if there is a very bad person and the only way to win is by working with a pirate, he will still try to arrest the pirate and fight the bad guy at the same time.
Probably the last good example I could think of, which is probably every cop that you have to deal with in Payday. Remember, you are a set of criminals. Yeah, Payday. You are a set of criminals. You do the murder and a lot of it.
Yeah.
And you work for some really bad people. Yeah, you gotta give you on that one.
I also have one last one, which is angels in Desgia. So in Desgia, in almost all the Desgia games, you're demons. You're literally the main cast is demons. And specifically in Desgia 1, the main antagonist is like the right hand of God, the seraph of all the angels. And all of their minions are like trying to fucking kill you. Like, I think chapter 2 they introduced the first angel, Flawn, who's an angel trainee, and they like the seraph literally just goes up to her and just goes like, "Hey, go assassinate the king of the demons."
You got this, right?
She fails epically. Like horrifically bad. But basically in all of Desgia 1, you are fighting angels as demons, and these angels legitimately are like, "Hey, we need to take out these demons because they're causing too much chaos."
And they're right.
Yeah, like they are in a succession war for their new king, and it is spilling over into the human world, and it is causing too much chaos, so we need to take out these fucking demons. So legitimately, they're not bad. They're perfectly lawful and good. You are legitimately the bad guy. Kind of. Like your main character is like, I just want to be king of the demons. Your main character is the prince of hell. The prince of the netherworld, and he was in like a 3-year coma. He woke up, found out his dad died, and people are fighting for his crown. And he's like, you know what? No, I'm beating everyone down and showing them who's boss.
Speaking of, I know you guys said one last, but I'm gonna one last because I think the lawful good antagonists are mostly going to show up when you've got a villain protagonist.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
But Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, Captain Hammer, 100% lawful good, 100% a jerk.
Yeah,
it checks.
You know, Dr. Horrible is a villain. He knows that he is a villain. He does crime. He is proud of it. But he's also a super nice guy. Like, he's got a crush on the girl at the laundromat. He doesn't go out of his way to kill anybody. Actually, like, a big crux of the thing is that he doesn't want to kill anybody, but he has to in order to get into the legal evil. Meanwhile, Captain Hammer well, he's a hero. He's the good guy. He stops the bad guys. He saves lives. But he's doing it purely to feed his own ego. He does it because he gets praise for doing it, and that's it. And like the way he treats people in his personal life is poor, to put it simply. He doesn't treat them well. He figures out Dr. Horrible's secret identity and then steals his girlfriend just to be a giant middle finger to Dr. Horrible.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And whereas Dr. Horrible spends the entire series like really sort of flip-flopping and struggling with this idea of I have to kill somebody in order to reach my goals, Captain Hammer, basically as soon as he gets the excuse, is ready to kill. He sees that Dr. Horrible has built a death ray and decides, oh, you have escalated this to the point where killing is okay, therefore I'm going to kill you with your own death ray. And the only reason he doesn't succeed is because he accidentally broke the death ray. And it exploded in his face, and it really, really hurt.
I just like slight tangent on that. That ending was so hilarious to me because it's just like big, strong, muscly man, like Superman level of indestructibility and all that stuff. As soon as he gets the first inch of pain, he cries like a 3-year-old. And it's just brilliant.
Well, I mean, because that's really feeding into his character. You know, he's got this whole ego, and part of that is because he's untouchable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He can have whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants. And he gets praises when he does good, quote unquote. and nothing's ever really been able to stand in his way. The very moment he runs into an obstacle, he doesn't know what to do. He's never faced that.
And so he breaks down, and it is the greatest comedy act.
All right. So with that, I think that's a good place to start to wrap this up. Now, I know this is a long one for everybody, so thanks for hanging in there for it. Real quick, there's a couple of villains and antagonists that I think you should try to explore and see where you want to put them. Dr. Doofenshmirtz is a villain. Figure out where that guy goes, because he's one of my favorites too. He's a good one. Senior, bored old guy. Good luck on that one. Any other like weird villains or antagonists you want to throw out there for everybody else here as sort of a final thought?
Yeah, you know what? I'd kind of like to hear about who you think does not fit onto the chart, period.
Yeah, there are some like really detailed villains and antagonists that legitimately just don't make sense on any of these spots because they fit multiple depending on when you read them. So like I want to see some of those villains or not villains, but those antagonists that just kind of break the chart.
Tom and or Jerry.
Jeez. Which one's the antagonist?
Which one even is the antagonist? Where would they fall on this? I don't know.
All right. With that being said, though, if you can figure out any other ones, that's would be great. Our next episode will be available on August 19th. Thanks for everybody who's hanging out there, and I think we'll just wrap it up from here. This is Gaming Theater Podcast with another EXP boost. Thanks for listening, and this is Gaming Theater Podcast logging out. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Gaming Theater Podcast is hosted, created, produced, and edited by Leo Garcia, the Geek Scorpio. Our music is A Drinking Game, stock media provided by Stormwave Audio /Pond5. Our cover art is by Adam Parker. You can find him at ParkerGFX on Twitter. If you want to send us some financial support to help with producing things for Gaming Theater, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingtheaterpresents. It helps us out. Want to send support that doesn't hit your wallet? Please leave a review with wherever you hear your podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. It really helps out. Thank you for listening.